shared interest group of the Harvard Alumni Association that aims to develop an equitable, intergenerational, and international community of alumni and supporters with connections to the university. Our panelists today include Ms. Halima Iqbal, who is the co-founder and CEO at Oraan, which is Pakistan's first women-led, women-first fintech startup. Halima is the only female CEO of a fintech company in Pakistan. She carries extensive experience in the financial sector abroad. We are also joined today by Ms. Lubna Farooq Malik, who has almost 3 decades of experience in a financial regulator. She is currently serving as the Director General of the Financial Monitoring Unit, which is the Financial Intelligence Unit of Pakistan, and has previously also served as Managing Director of the Deposit Protection Corporation. Ms. Rahat Konain has over 2 decades of experience in her field with over 8 years in public service. She is currently serving a second term as the chairperson of the Competition Commission of Pakistan. She has previously served as member of the Audit Oversight Board, an independent director and chairperson, Pakistan LNG Limited, and has held independent directorships on the boards, including the Pakistan Stock Exchange and various other listed companies. Finally, we have Ms. Sadia Khan, who is currently serving as the Commissioner SECP and is the first female to hold that post. Prior to that, she has served as the President and CEO of the Pakistan Institute of Corporate Governance. She has worked with various international institutions and local regulatory authorities, including the Asian Development Bank in the Philippines, the SECP, and the State Bank of Pakistan. Her book, titled Corporate Governance Landscape of Pakistan, was published by the Oxford University Press in 2017. I am joined today in moderating this session by Ms. Sobia Maqbool, who is currently engaged as a risk consultant with Oraan. She is a graduate of the Harvard Kennedy School with over 15 years of experience in the financial sector. She also leads a travel startup by the name of Route 16. Thank you all for joining us today, and over to you, Sobia.
Thank you very much, Zainab, for the introduction. And I'm really glad to be joined by this power panel today. So as we all know that women's participation in leadership roles has increased globally and is being commended for making positive contributions to socio-economic progress. But the numbers are still dismally low. If you look at the fintech sector specifically, only 12% of global fintech founders and co-founders are women, and only 6% of fintechs have female CEOs. These numbers are alarmingly low. And while the small percentage of women in fintech is a constant topic and pain point for the industry, we do know that many talented women are not only making waves, but also making a real difference in their companies and fintechs as a whole. We believe that 4 key stakeholders in the fintech ecosystem, investors, founders, regulators, and financial institutions, will have to join forces
Seems like the technology platforms are not keeping up with the fintech developments.
I'm sorry, I think Sobia's come.
Yeah, she's just coming back now.
Okay, she's back on. We'll just give her a second. I think Sobia is having some connectivity issues. Anyway, we'll just start off with our first question, which I'd like to pose to all the panelists, and I'd like you to take turns to answer that. And that is, we'd essentially like to know about your personal journeys and the importance of allies and sponsors throughout your professional career. Any particular anecdote that you'd like to share with our audience, and also at the same time shed some light on how important it is to have a mentor in developing your leadership skills. Halima, maybe you can start.
So sorry, Zainab, was that? Did you ask me? I
Yes.
just lost. Yeah. So I think in terms of my journey, being in the financial sector, both in Pakistan and abroad, there is a stark difference. I started off my career in Canada. While still there was little representation, there was a lot more representation that you would see in Pakistan from a gender perspective, both from a product based built around women, catering to their requirements. But in Pakistan, I think the narrative needs to change now. If we are a population of 220 million plus, where 50% are women, we need to be designing and building products very actively to include women into the financial sector. And as you think about building, there's obviously that journey that comes in, like who are those decision makers? Where are those decision makers are going to come from? How are we enabling people within the ecosystem to be those to be in the leadership position, to hone that talent, to then be able to bring more and more services, more and more products into play.
So, Harima, I'm going to dive deep directly into the next question, which has been on top of our minds for a lot of us. You are one of the only startups that raised funding in 2021, and only female-led startup, $3 million. Great achievement. But do you think you face discrimination as a woman in terms of raising funding?
So so in the fintech space we were the only women, and if you look at globally, the stats are pretty scary. The amount of money that goes to women tech startups, women founders, is around 2.1% of VC dollar. So the problem is not just Pakistan; it is across the globe. And yes, of course, there are a lot of biases. I still get questions around: do women need financial services of their own? The questions that women founders are asked are very, very different than male founders would be asked. And those questions are more around risk, right? Like, are you being too ambitious? Are your financials making sense? Is this product? Is there profitability? Is there sustainability? But like, these questions are important, but at different stages of the company, right? Like at a pre-seed level, you wouldn't be asking such questions in so much depth. But those are the kind of those kind of questions that we do get asked, and I think it's part and parcel of it. You got a bit grow that thick skin, and just move towards the mission and the vision that you would have.
Okay, so I think we're going to dive deeper into this later, but I want to come around to other panelists also, and maybe turn over to Ms. Sadi. Who has been your biggest ally in this journey, in this professional journey of yours, and how important is it to have a mentor?
Thank you, Sobia. So I am a strong believer in mentorship, and that's why even today I myself mentor a lot of the university graduates through my various alumni networks. But the reason I do that and the reason I pay so much attention is because I think I missed out on those opportunities myself in the earlier part of my career. I started my career on Wall Street in 1991, and at that stage, there were such few women in senior positions that they couldn't be seen to sympathize with women under their charge. So it was an uphill task to be recognized and mentored by them. So I think my generation in particular, having learned a lesson during that earlier phase in the careers, decided that if we were ever in a position to make a change, we would support other women in our organizations. And that's why I think a large part of my own journey, apart from my professional career, has been devoted to trying to enhance female empowerment and ensuring that women play a role in decision making. In terms of, but having said that, doesn't mean that nobody helped me along the way. There's been lots of good bosses who gave me the authority and the responsibility to be able to make a difference. I had three strong bosses in a row: Dr. Shamshad Akhtar in ADB Manila, followed by Khalid Mirza at SECP, followed by Dr. Ishrat Hussain at the State Bank. And they were all those who entrusted me with responsibility and gave me the requisite authority to make a meaningful change. But at the end of it, I think I'm a strong advocate for women supporting women. And that's why even this year's International Women's Day, my main message was women have to support women, because at the end of the day, you will find the right mentors and the right people to sponsor you, but there's nothing like you supporting your own case and making your own case with the men or the women, because at a certain stage, I think self-interest does take over. And however well-intentioned your initial mentors would be, they don't always support you through the entire length of your journey. So believe in yourself. When you reach a certain stage, I think it's more on yourself to be able to project yourself and to make those inroads with or without the help of your initial sponsors. But along the way, do lend a helping hand to others who may be less fortunate than yourself in the earlier part of your careers.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Sadia. Ms. Lubna, if you could please shed some light on the same question.
Okay. Thanks for inviting me, first of all. And I would echo a lot of things that Sadia said, because I also started my career in 1990. And in Pakistan, it was quite unheard of to see women in officer positions in financial industry. So it was not like, forget about having senior females, even in the officer cadre, there were very few females. So it was quite challenging, and initially you needed to work twice as hard and to appear to take up all sorts of complex assignment without any complaints or anything. You have to be like twice as good as your colleagues. But good thing is that most people, once you develop the first set of your job values, when they know that you are serious in your career, they will help you out, and they will give you some credits. And I think I was lucky enough to be in organizations that were growing at that time. It was, I think, some leasing corporations at that time that I worked there. And since 2001, when I joined State Bank, that at the same time we had some really dynamic, even my hiring as a mid career officer, because it was a very few. And then subsequently, Dr. Shamshad was again very instrumental. I would say if I have to pick one mentor for me, it would be Dr. Shamshad, who was very instrumental in my career in the State Bank of Pakistan. However, I would say that getting mentors in our time was very difficult, because it was a very male-dominated positions, and all the seniors were males, and the dynamics at the office is not the type that you can become overly, interactive to your male colleagues, particularly your seniors. So it was a little different. But now, I think since I have been heading various departments, I have made an effort to make sure that I provide this mentorship to my officers, female officers. And I'm very pleased to see a number of officers from State Bank female officers who are being promoted to higher levels and are conducting difficult assignments. I think what I would say as a takeaway from my career is that firstly you be ready to work twice as hard, and also try to build alliances on the basis of your work rather than on some just friendship or something like that, because then those will last you a little bit more as compared to just being mentored by one person and that's it. So I think you have to continuously show that you are serious and you're continuing to meet the targets and everything. And yes, it is more challenging to be a senior as a woman as compared to men, because you have to prove yourself every time. It's every time you move to a new assignment, every time you get a new governor, you in a way have to prove again and again. And it is quite tough, I would say, as compared to my male colleagues. But good thing is that now it can actually happen also. Previously, I think in females of my generations had trouble getting the opportunity
Thank you,
even.
Lubna,
So
for
now,
your comments.
thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
And I think my key takeaway from your comments is that we now have to be mentors for other people coming into the field. So Rahat, we'll turn to you to see who's been your biggest ally in this journey.
There's a fire drill in the background. Please bear with me. I can't do anything about it right now. Uh, so many allies. And I want to say one thing at the outset. It doesn't have to be a female mentor. A mentor can be anyone. So starting from my father, my husband, my friends, my siblings, but never my peers. Never my peers, but my seniors, yes. My teachers, yes. My family, yes. My husband, yes. My children even have been doing that role, I would say, in terms of providing extreme support. Second question, if I may add to all this, because the first question was that you'd like to ask, Zainab said, the journey. I don't want to go into the details of the journey, but I think for anyone, if we want to see women in leadership role, if we want women to be coming forward, I feel there is a whole track for each and every working woman. You start with overcoming your own biases and your own estimation about yourself. Think high of yourself or think low of yourself, or you're not confident. I must admit that till the age of 11, I was such a backbencher and mediocre that I would always get to hear, because my elder sister was just 1 year apart, was, great, and she remains great till today. She's a scientist. She has her own patents. So I was always compared to her, and she was brilliant and I was a mediocre. So I was condemned as a mediocre because of my results. So one day I just decided, no, this year, for the 7th grade, I decided I will be the captain of the class. And I told my sister that I have decided and I would be the captain. And she said, have you seen your face? Look into the mirror. You're mediocre. They don't make you captain like this. I said, no, I will be. And in the class, when the teacher asked who would volunteer, I raised my hand and I was the only one. She made me. And I retained that title for 3 years, from, holding in the class of 70, a position around 35, I at least jumped to top 10. I think so. I overcame that barrier that I am not to be condemned as a mediocre, and despite that, I can do things. So first thing, you overcome your own bias about yourself. Second is what people think. I think all of us need somehow third-party validation. What people think of us. For God's sake, I think the first thing we need to learn is to believe in our own self. I think if you overcome that barrier, people start, you will notice it that when people say, I am beautiful, they become beautiful. So if you say you can do it, you can do it. The can-do approach can change a lot of things. And that's another barrier. So to stop worrying about what people think about you, I think what's important is to focus on what you want. Now, in wanting what you want, do you have the clarity? Because most of the time, we don't know what we want. I would request everyone to think, what do you want to do with your life? I mean, I must say it was a great advantage in our family that we had to do something more than just becoming something. You know, we already had a larger cause to discuss about, whether it's a political discussion, socially how things can be improved, politically what things are going wrong. So we had a family, it's a big family, 8 siblings together. That also lends a lot of direction, having clarity. So I don't want to go on, but I think first thing is the bias, second is clarity, third, and I'll stop there, is never ever can I believe that we are not confronted with choices. Whether it's the career path, whether it's your life partner, whether it's choosing a profession or not, whether taking tough decision. I mean, every day here in Competition Commission, I am confronted with decision making. What are the governing principles with which you decide? Two things are important in decision making. Number one is, do you have the right values for that decision making? And the second is the courage. Now, these two, if you look in your life, these are the two factors that you're confronted with through and through. So if you have the clarity and the right focus, you can change your own path. That's what I believe. So you're a master of yourself. You always have a choice. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. Rana. That was definitely very moving. And just picking up on what you said, I'd like to move to Ms. Sadia now and ask her, based on what Ms. Rana just explained to us, how important is it for women to not undersell themselves? What are the factors to keep in mind when we're evaluating our own worth? Because we read time and again, we see time and again the statistical studies that show that women often tend to undersell themselves. And there may be a host of reasons behind that. But as a woman who's accomplished so much in your life, what do you suggest to women like us who are still starting off, or the ones who are aspiring to start off careers? What is it that we should do to be more confident and to just simply not undersell ourselves?
Thank you, Zainab. That's a very good question. But let me quickly respond to Rahat. I agree with everything that she said. Just to add to it, somebody recently said that the women in their 50s have the most comfortable time, because by that time they finally realize that they don't give a damn about what other people think. So I'm happily at that stage. Now, to your question, Zainab, very important. And I think you're absolutely right. Women do often undersell themselves, especially in relation to men who often oversell themselves. So even if you may be competent and for a particular job, you'll still have these doubts at your back of your mind, because it's just your conscience, right? There's a certain level of perfection that you seek before you're able to say, yes, I am completely cut out for this particular job. Whereas a guy who would be half as competent as yourself would be saying, yeah, I'm the perfect man for this, and this is what I deserve. So I think this is a conscious effort we do need to make. Number one, there are no shortcuts. I mean, we have to build up our credentials. We have to professionalize the way we deal ourselves. But the one thing I think women miss out on is networking. One, the opportunities are limited, but also I think women themselves often underestimate the importance of networking. And I mean, just to give you an example, when I returned to the country after many years, I wanted to build up my own network. So I started this series of lunches in Karachi called LEAP, for lady entrepreneurs and professionals, but really leaping into the next century, so that women themselves came forward and supported each other. And it started with a big bang. A lot of women showed up, and the numbers started dwindling. It was just one weekend a month. But I would get excuses like, that's the one Saturday I have for my errands, the one Saturday for the grandparents, the one Saturday with the kids. Look, it's one Saturday in the whole month. And given the importance that networking plays in how you progress in your career, I think it's absolutely important that you realize this early on and invest that time and energy and resources in building up those networks, because this is how your career will advance over time. We are not unique in terms of a country to say that a lot of things happen through contact. It happens throughout the world. It's the way things play out differently. But here, a lot of the difference we see between how men progress and how women progress is because of the dearth of adequate networks around themselves, propelling them forward, giving them that daily inroads into what the opportunities might be coming up. And I don't mean just professional networks. These can be networks beyond your professions. So the group of women I brought together were doctors, lawyers, architects. I used to really envy the male members of a family who could just, at the pick of a phone, reach a doctor, a specialist, a lawyer, an architect. And I wanted to build up that network because I felt that it was so important in not the way you conducted your life, not just your profession, that you're able to do it with the ease of a button. So this is important that you do that. And when you network, part of that marketing comes in through those networks. So if you're on your own, not talking too much, and not having those opportunities to rise and shine between different networks, you don't develop that habit of talking about your achievement, talking about your accomplishments, trying to break the barriers into the different networks. So one, I think it's very important for you to try and make inroads into various networks, and that develops a habit of being out there, being in their faces, so to speak, to try and talk about your accomplishments and your but also at the end of the day, even when you're applying for jobs, you realize that in terms of salary negotiations, men are often much more adept at asking for salaries above the level, and women often agree to whatever is offered, or not ask for more. And again, it's that little voice at the back of your head saying that that's enough, that's your conscience. I mean, fairness, I think, is built into our systems, sometimes to a detriment, but that's what makes us different, and that's what makes us unique. And I won't say that undersell that either. Just admit it for what it is, and people will recognize you for the honesty, the professionalism, the integrity you bring to the various roles that you occupy, and take it to the next level when you apply for the next position.
Right. Thank you, Ms. Sadia. Sobia, I think we're having some trouble hearing you, so I'll just move on to Halima for the next question, which is slightly more fintech specific, Halima. So, what I'd like to know from you is that evidently, a lack of presence of women in the fintech sector is rooted primarily or in part in a lack of women representation in the tech field in general, right? So, do you think how do you see this problem being solved? Do you think this is a structural problem that will take time to solve, and we need long-term measures for this, or do you think this is something that we can address in a more quicker fashion with more short-term solutions?
Thank you, Zainab. I think the representation problem is not just from a tech perspective, but it's also from a finance perspective. And when you talk about the fintech space, especially in Pakistan, it is both an access issue and it's also a design issue, right? So to solve for it, you need to start setting precedents. You need to start allowing both genders to have that equal play come into this space to creatively solve for the bigger problem, which fintechs are all solving towards, right? Which is around financial inclusion, building new products for different segmentations which are completely underserved or unserved. So I think it is a both. You can solve for it from a short-term perspective, but you also have to think about that longer term. How are you building that sustainability in the plans where you're allowing more representation to happen? And again, I think it happens through putting our people like ourselves on this panel out there for networking opportunities, for mentorship opportunities, and also creating this very strong narrative around how important it is for women to come into this space and start building with each other or within the ecosystems to be able to solve for this problem. So from a short-term perspective, it is putting ourselves, people who are already in this field, putting ourselves out, but then putting ourselves as somebody who are open for to give those mentorship opportunities to younger women who are looking to break into this field. And then from a tech play, from a VC perspective, more money needs to come into this space as well. I don't know if so I2I's report came out for the funding last year. And while Pakistan raised quite a large amount of money for the first time, the money that went to women founders was very, very low. So we need to be able to solve this problem by by bringing in, and investors need to start putting in more money into women founders as well. Zainab, you're on mute.
Ms. Labna, picking up on what Halima has just said, since you have so much experience working as a financial regulator, I'd like to ask you how important is it for the regulator itself to be inclusive, for the industry that it regulates to then reflect that inclusivity. You, as somebody who's worked at the state bank for so long, how do you see this?
Yeah, I think it is absolutely essential that women participation in the financial system is increased, and not just as a recipient of financial products, but also people working in the financial sector. So we have had various initiatives in the past also, but they were more like one-off. So, for example, in State Bank itself, some years ago, we actually went out and hired a whole new, assistant directors group of women. For just the women batch was hired, and we have been promoting in our various schemas that there should be no discrimination in terms of their hiring processes across the financial sector, as well as in the lending decisions of the banks. However, that was not enough, and there is a huge gap in women participation. So recently, State Bank has launched a gender balancing strategy in which it has given specific targets to financial participants. I will just talk about two. There are a number of them, but I'll talk about two. One is that in your workforce, you have to at least increase the level of women's to 20% by 2024. And then similarly, there's a target that you have to bring out a certain amount is given products specifically targeted for women customers. Though this is usually State Bank don't give targets, but this time, because the gap is so big, so it was felt that there has to be certain targets given to financial participants to add women. I just want to add one more thing here, is that this improvement in fintech, and particularly with the corona, when a lot of things went online, it's a big windfall for women participants. Your dependence as a young girl sitting in some a small city is less on your relatives, or on asking some your male family members to get you something, or to even get information. Now a lot of information is available online. It was already available, but because we were not so used to using these devices, which we have become in the last 2 years. I'm talking about young females who are entering either colleges or just graduating. So now they can really leverage this going forward, and not just in terms of their reliance on themselves that can increase, and their reliance to look for better opportunities of earning, or even just being in the networking area, which Sadia was talking about. Even the networking is going to be a little bit better to do. So I think the technology is going to be quite a game changer for women in Pakistan.
I think that's very true, and you've highlighted very important point. And I think quickly I wanted to take Sadia's opinion on, since she's joined as commissioner, insurance also, and it is an extremely male-dominated sector, and also a sector that has remained neglected for very long. So how significant is women's presence in the regulatory space, and particularly in an industry like insurance, which I think is huge for any country? And how challenging has it been for you in this specific role?
So, Sobia, I think you might have insight into the recent presentations I've made on International Women's Day, because I've been sharing lots of data, especially on the insurance sector. So just two aspects. One is walking the talk, as was mentioned earlier. How are we enhancing our own capacity and doing gender mainstreaming within our own institutions to be able to play a more proactive role? And for that, I want to just share some data. And out of self-interest, of course, I've projected the data from the time I joined the Commission, which was March 2020, to the current. So in terms of the number of female representation in senior management within the Commission, it has enhanced from 19% to 23% in these years, and in female heads of departments from 22% to 28%. The number of job opportunities for women has risen from 25% to 45% in these 2 years. The training opportunities for women has increased from 50% to 73%, and we've brought in a whole host of policy changes, including maternity leave being enhanced from 3 months to 6 months, training on anti-harassment, and the inclusion of women in decision-making forums that the SCP has a chance to convene. So these are all things that we've done internally to try and enhance the representation of women, both within the middle and senior management, but also in decision-making forums throughout. Now, what have we done externally, starting off with Section 154, a couple of years back, when we mandated female representation on every public interest company board. When I rejoined the Commission, I commissioned a study to see what the regulatory impact had been, and that report called Women on Boards came out in November 2020. It's on our website. And what it showed was not only had the number of women risen in the boards of listed companies, but interestingly, the financial performance of these companies, there was a positive correlation between greater gender diversity and the financial performance of these companies. However, what we also noticed was that while women were coming onto decision-making positions, the corporate pipeline wasn't being built up. So there wasn't enough of a robust pipeline to ensure a continuity of this policy and the supply of women for these positions down the road. So this time last year, we came out with a circular asking all the companies to come up with a board-sanctioned gender policies that were formalized for retention, recruitment, promotion, development, anti-harassment, daycare centers, whatever, to create a conducive work environment to retain enough women in the workforce over time. We followed that up with circulars, particularly for the NBFCs and also for the insurance sector. And since I was overseeing the insurance sector as well, we also asked for gender disaggregated data to try and see the benchmark case right now so that we could assess the impact of these changes over a period of time. We got that data recently and we compiled it, and I shared it during International Women's Day. It's pretty dismal. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. Out of 39 insurance companies, very few have formalized these gender policies. There are perhaps 17 which have no anti-harassment policies, another 14 with no daycare centers. I mean, there's a lot of work to be done. So, but the fact that we started the dialogue, we've started the conversation, we've created the awareness. We hope that similar to the other provisions of corporate governance that we've been insisting on over time, these provisions towards diversity will also be ingrained into the corporate culture and will pay dividends over time. So hopefully, I hope they're better news in a couple of years' time, but the journey has started, definitely.
So I'm going to come back to you for more on governance, because I think you have a lot of experience on that side. But I just quickly want to turn to Rahat right now. And you're also operating in a sector that is, I would say, male-dominated, probably surrounded by a lot of men. There's a lot of expectation sometimes from women when they're in such roles that they adopt a more cold attitude in their work approach. And what would be your suggestion, or how have you dealt with such situations, and what would you advise other younger women coming up?
I don't know what exactly you meant by cold approach. I'd like to understand first before responding to this. You would say.
So I think the best example might be how Clinton was approached by others when she was running for presidency. And I think a male counterpart would be taken as somebody who has a serious approach, but women may be more lamented as, being cold and distant. So sometimes these expectations spring up, otherwise they're not taken seriously.
Two facts that would be very interesting for you. Since 2007, this commission has been established. Only for 4.5 years, male have chaired the position. Okay, the rest of the time, women have headed the institution. Interestingly, currently, out of 4 members, 3 are females. So it's a highly female-dominated and female-empowered commission. But talking about the position and the role that we have to discharge, this is also a very new field, I would say. Competition law is very dynamic, and even globally, if you look at it, antitrust, women are rising to the top. We had from Israel Competition Commission, we had former president, we had in Barcelona, we had a female head here, we have been heading it. So females are emerging in this field. Honestly speaking, I don't think if you're raised as a professional, you have to have a gender blind vision. I mean, that does not mean if you are heading an institution, you would, as a woman, yes. There are 2 factors that make a female head or place her in an advantageous position if we believe in the studies. I mean, I'm sorry, I have to admit that these studies, I don't take the outcomes that seriously, but we have to talk about them. So they say that as female heads, 2 things that come out is communication and consideration. They are good at communication, easy to talk to, and consideration is that they look after their followers better than men. So that's why women leaders are generally accepted as better leaders. I don't know how much I've qualified for that or how much we all can, but I'll just share with you things that I did. I have 4 kids, right? So throughout, I had to struggle for a creche facility in a daycare center within a law firm, within the office I was working. And in that case, I must say my seniors were very, very supportive because raising 4 was different. And on a lighter note, when one of my former seniors, when I came to Islamabad, he said, Rahat, I was full term, expecting my second baby. And he said, when do you want to join? This is your final thing. I said, from tomorrow. He said, no, you come after your delivery. I said, no, from tomorrow. I have to. So he said, okay. And then 11 months down the road, I was again expecting. And I had promised him that I would deliver. He said, this is not what you promised. You said you would deliver at work. You were doing it. But you know what? My flexi timings were only for 2 hours. And I ended up working 8 hours a day. So how I covered up was with my commitment to work. And he was so happy. He initially agreed for 1, then 2, and then 3. I was given a whole room for my kids. And I carry it on. So I'm just saying that you have to create an enabling environment and you become more conscious of it. So I have created a creche facility in my last term. Then we provided flexi timings. Recently, we have added on that all females whose kids are there, they can access and monitor their babies on their mobile phone. So it's about understanding the needs of females and making their conditions more congenial. The rest is you have to work as hard, maybe twice, maybe thrice, I don't disagree. But professionally, you must be identified not as a female professional, but as a professional. That's the thumb rule for me.
I think it's very inspiring to
Right. Sobia, your voice is breaking up again, so I'm just going to pick up on announcing that we're inviting questions from the audience now. So whoever has a question, please send it in the comment section, and we'll put it to our panel. So Mariam has a question. Mariam is thanking us for this great session, and she wants to know what in the speaker's opinion is a primary reason for gender imbalance in the fintech industry. I think Halima, why don't you take this question? Maybe one of the first 2 things that come to your mind as reasons behind this glaring imbalance.
I think the space is relatively new, and I think there are no precedents. It's not just Pakistan, it's across the globe. And we're a very nascent country right now when it comes to tech ecosystem. So I do think the work the regulator is doing, the work that the tech industry collectively is doing, there will be more and more women representation. We are working towards it. We're building that next generation of women entrepreneurs. But yeah, I think it's a little too early in the journey. Unfortunately, there's not enough representation, but the work that is being done collectively as an ecosystem, there is very, very high hope that this imbalance is going to change and the narrative is going to change.
The good news in that is that, as you know, the SCCB has been running these sandbox cohorts. In the first cohort, we only had 2 teams which had female representation. But in the second cohort, out of 38 applicants, 15 teams have female representation, and that too because we said we will be looking more and more on applications with female representation. So hopefully this will increase over time.
Can I add one aspect,
Sure.
please? Fintech is not the end. It's a means. The real answer lies that unless and until you will cover your gender parity gap and otherwise literacy rate, it would not happen. So you have to address the education part, because from primary, at the primary level, 94.5 people get enrolled. But till 5th grade, there are only 20% who transcend to that thing. So the transition is so slow. You have to start from the grassroots level, because for fintech thing to be a success eventually, you'll have to ensure that women are educated appropriately and their needs are met. I think that's important, because this fintech will eventually, it's intended to economically empower women, hence adding to economic growth and efficiency. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. So the basic step is education. Can't hear.
Yeah, sorry, Sobia, we can't hear you. So I'm just going to go on to the next question. Ask Ms. Lubna that it's actually not just okay. We have a question from the audience, so I think we're going to take that. So Sundar wants to know: is it easy for women from every socio economic background to get to the top, or is it still reserved for the more privileged? And just adding to this question, I think it's not just gender that sometimes works against us. We're also discriminated based on, like, so this is asking our socioeconomic background, and also sometimes, and more recently, this has become more common on the basis of our age. So as in the tech industry, more and more young people are joining, and more young women are aspiring to become leaders. So Ms. Lubna, what do you think? How do women like us deal with this intersection, where we're discriminated not just based on our gender, but also in some cases socioeconomic backgrounds, and sometimes even our age, and we're simply discounted for being young?
Okay, I think as far as the privilege is concerned, we have to be honest, and it does affect not just the females, but males also. So it is more difficult for a person who is from a relatively a lower economic background to break through at a higher cadre. However, it's not unheard of, and I think the main game changer is access to good education. So if you can get education, even if you are, let's say, not from the very privileged or very connected families, your education can make a big difference. Unfortunately, that itself is a hurdle for a lot of our people. So I will not say that we can just achieve this kind of achievement in finance or in any other technology based area unless and until we have to improve our education system, so that at the minimum our lower middle class or lower classes have access to good education of at least high school or first bachelor. So that's one thing. As far as your other question regarding age is concerned, yes, there is a kind of I would say bias against either very, very young females or females in the very old females. And that is, of course, because of the societal attitude. I would not say they are exclusively for fintech, but it is something that is inherent in our society. However, again, I would go back to my earlier point, is that with a lot of work being done through technology, this ageism is I expect is going to be reduced considerably, and particularly the younger crowd is now much more savvy. in terms of technology. So that area is going to be, I think, taken care of. I think the more important would be female on the higher age bracket. So they have to obviously meet the new challenges and keep themselves informed, just to remain relevant. Again, this is also something that older men are also going to experience. So I would say that keeping up to date is very important for the older females, and for younger females, I would say the current lot is very good already. And at a national level, I think access to education is key.
Right.
Ravna, you
Thank
just
you.
scared me.
Thank you. Yes, Halima, would you like to add something?
I do want to add on to this. I think the conversation that we had in here in terms of not having those biases, not questioning yourselves, building a network, finding a mentor, and all of these things actually doesn't matter what socioeconomic class you come from. It is at the end of the day, how hungry are you to have to get the things that you want to do, and dreaming does not necessarily require money or your socioeconomic class. So having that audacious dreams and then finding ways to get to that is important. And in my opinion, education, like the formal education, yes, it is important, but there's so many ways to get yourself educated now. So I know those kinds of excuses. I think I'm not saying excuses, but I think it is important to recognize and have that vision and work towards that vision without creating this, oh, I come from a middle income or a lower income, as a hindrance for yourself.
Thank you. Thank you, Halima. So Khushbakht has sent a question for Ms. Rahat, and she wants to know that your law firm is probably very accommodating. However, in a majority of law firms, the work environment is very toxic and conservative. How do you suggest we navigate that?
You navigate that by articulating and communicating what you want, and you negotiate and you work for it. Nothing is tailor-made. You have to put your foot down. I had to negotiate it within my own firm when I was establishing it with my spouse, that you have to have a room for the kids. But previous to this, even with the other firm which I was working, it was just not that it came so easy, because people used to tell me a lot, oh, you have such a tailor-made thing, you have an ideal thing, that's why you can work. No. It's not that that's why I could work. It's just, but for 2 hours, I worked for 8 hours. And I gave them the performance that they really wanted me. And when they gave me the increment, I declined it and requested them that for the rest of the kids may be accommodated. So there's always a give and take. It's not a one-way traffic. I believe that you have to keep pursuing it and look for the options. Obviously, you have to understand that and generally the bias that I have seen is, if you're getting married or you are expecting or you are in a certain stage for which you cannot be blamed, employers don't entertain your request. That happens with many of us. Does that mean we should give up? No, you keep trying. I do believe what Hamna just said, that with all the barriers and recognizing other things, eventually how hungry you are and how much drive you have and how much clarity you have in pursuing it. You have to. And there is a will, there is a way. It's a cliched thing, but I do believe it.
Right, thank you. And since we're just entering last 4 or 5 minutes of our session, I'll take a question around the table. And that is something I ask on behalf of, I think, all the women who are attending this seminar or who will watch it later, is that what are the 2 or maybe 3 things that we must keep in mind when we find ourselves in a room full of men where decisions are being made and we have to make sure that we are heard? Ms. Tadia, starting from you.
So I've been in those rooms many, many times. I think it's important to remain true to yourself. When we talk about diversity and diversity adding value, when you do go into a situation, when you find yourself in a minority, maintain that diverse point of view, because that's what you're contributing around the table. So be true to yourself, speak your mind, make sure your voice is heard. There's a lot of literature out there saying that it takes 3 women in a boardroom to make a difference, not because it takes 3 women to make a change, but by the time you reach a critical number of 3, men start seeing you as another director rather than a representative of your gender. So it's important. But even as a single woman, I've hopefully had many conversations where I've been able to convince others of my point of view as well. So as I said, number one, be true to yourself. Number two, speak up. And number three, cherish your diversity, because it's important that diverse points of view are listened to, and which help the decision makers reach the optimal conclusion.
Thank you. Ms. Lubna?
Lubna, you're mute.
Sorry. I think your preparedness on the topic is the number one, I would say. The second is to have the confidence to hold on your own rather than feeling intimidated by that. So even if you are feeling intimidated, act confident. So act is important here. And thirdly, I would say that try to be maybe somewhat a little bit pushy. I would not say that in a bad way, but you have to be a little bit more pushy to get your voice across, because normally in a group of men, and this has been communicated to people even in working in Europe and USA, etc., that sometimes the women point is just ignored, and when the men say another man say the same point, they all say, "Oh yeah, that is the greatest one." And this anecdote I have heard, I have experienced, I have heard it from my friends in USA, and even women I've met across the world. They have said that they have at some point in time have experienced this. So you have to be a little bit pushy. I won't say be a very obnoxious person all the time, but at certain point in time, you have to be extra pushy. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Rahat?
I don't know whether I can reduce it to 3 points, but in order of priority, number one, preparedness certainly helps very much. You have to be well prepared on anything that you have to speak. Number two, be yourself. I agree with Sadia. You have to be yourself, and pretense doesn't help. Third, call the bluff. Men, a room full of men generally have this so much expectation on X, Y, Z, and if you start being bothered about that, you'll never be yourself. So you have to have the right focus in terms of questioning the right things. I must admit that in the board meetings, several occasions, when I've asked such basic questions, and I would always say, "Excuse my naivety, but is this?" And I've been so surprised that they don't know anything about it. It's just that, you feel so threatened. Ki, "Pata nahi aap kya pooch rahe? What are you asking?" that they will label you. So never be afraid of asking question if you've gone well prepared, because that basic fundamental thing will actually lend clarity. A lot of times we are worried about, that's what I say, we are always worried about what people will think. Stop worrying about that. You've done your homework, then you have all the right to ask the correct question and raise that thing. So the key thing is never be overawed by people who are senior or by their strength or majority, because the one with courage is in majority, not just the numbers. As a regulator, I always believe that it's not about consensus, it's about consultation that matters. So you go prepared, and then you speak your mind.
Thank you. And Halima?
Assertiveness. I think assertiveness comes with having the clarity of what you want to say and embracing the position and the place that you come from. So having that is extremely important. I think the second part of it is confidence, leaving your imposter syndromes behind, and knowing the value that you can add and the reason why you are there. And I think the third one would be preparedness. There is nothing, you need to be able to, and I think it goes back to working twice as hard or 3 times as hard as men. But if you want to be assertive, if you want to be confident in your position, you gotta work hard to get there.
Yes.
Right. Thank you all, you wonderful ladies. Thank you for joining us today. I, for one, especially feel deeply inspired, and I'm sure that whoever watched this and will watch it later will definitely take away the same feeling. Thank you all for joining us. I'm really thankful to both SadaPay and the Alumni Network for Harvard Women for putting this together. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.